Guys, welcome back to Trail Talk, this time for a special edition interview with Jack Kuenzle, just 2 days after his successful speed record attempt on Mont Blanc. He set an outstanding time of 4 hours 59 minutes for a new ski record, which is just unbelievable. 2 minutes off the running record, but 6 minutes under the ski record. So we're going to sit down, we're going to stick to the Trail Talk objectives. We're going to nerd out on strategy, preparation, nutrition, gear, all of this kind of stuff. And then we'll also talk about what's next. Like, Jack doesn't do much racing, it's all about FKTs, so we're going to dig into that a little bit. It's a really fun conversation. We've just had it just a few minutes ago, so please sit tight and enjoy the interview. Jack, great to sit down after observing your training and 2 attempts on Mont Blanc over, what, 3-ish weeks or so?
Yeah. I mean, well, thank you. I mean, you certainly know, because you had to get up at 3 in the morning or whatever twice.
Yeah, but worth it, I think. So let's just start off. How do you feel after the attempt 2 days ago, physically and mentally?
Physically, I feel kind of sore and I think rather odd. Like I feel it's certainly a bit in my. I mean, the worst thing I have going is I lost a bit of skin on my back. Like, not too bad. Just like, I mean, it wasn't even bleeding. I mean, you saw it. It was just.
It was weeping.
It was weeping. Yeah. It was just where I was running, with a pack with my skis and boots on, and just where it rubbed against my back, it just kind of wore the skin off, and that's like really painful. And then like weird stuff like my traps and glutes are still quite sore, and I'm pretty tired generally. I find after these things I don't usually sleep great, at least the night after, and then last night was just kind of hot. So yeah, a bit tired, a bit sore. I certainly don't have any interest in running today, but yeah, not too bad overall. Yeah.
And would you take much time off training as such?
It really depends on. I find earlier in the season when I've raced less, I can return to training faster. And then kind of the recovery as the season goes on after the events maybe gets a little bit harder and harder. Like I especially remember like when I did the Bob in 2022, like after that, like the wheels just like came completely off because like I'd stacked a bunch of stuff before that. So, I mean, I imagine tomorrow I've just been quite busy. Tomorrow, if I have some time, I'll probably run. And then I find once, after about a week, I should be pretty much fine. Probably, yeah, to like return to speed and stuff.
And you would have an appetite to return to that type of structure so soon?
We'll see. I'll let you know. Sometimes I find like this is kind of short, granted, like there's the downhill, but really the uphill is 4 hours. I think also, it's like 2 different modalities. It's an hour of running, 3 hours of skiing. So that kind of spreads the fatigue out a little bit at altitude, which kind of reduces like the muscular damage I find a little bit. So a couple of factors which make the damage maybe a little bit less. But sometimes I found actually many times after like 3 days after an objective, I'll start training again. And then I'll kind of have like a double dip around like 7 days or so where I'll like return to training too quickly and it'll just like catch up to me and I'll have to like, take a bit of time off. But, well, it's kind of different for everything, for every evolution.
It feels to me that a lot of the kind of the best athletes in trail and ultra really is their ability to recover more than the layperson. And I'm not sure if that's because of the volume of training that they do or it feeds in it the other way. Generally, what's your sort of recovery like on these types of things?
Yeah, I would say that is accurate. I think there's 2 things going on there. I think, first, like the more volume you do in training, certainly, the faster you'll recover. And then I think in the cases of a lot of professional athletes, largely to include myself, like don't really have a real job and I just work, remotely part-time as a coach more or less. And don't really have a lot of the other stressors, so they can kind of prioritize doing nothing. And I think that can kind of, speed recovery up a fair bit. If you're able just to kind of like, lounge around for a couple of days versus like, racing on a Saturday, resting on Sunday, going to a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. It's like, fuck, that's going to take a bit longer to recover.
Yeah, I think that's what the lay person is like most Mondays in work. They busted themselves all weekend doing their long runs and things, and then they're going to the office on a Monday to sleep behind a computer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thinking about the run itself, the first attempt you pulled the plug, maybe was it 90 minutes in even?
Yeah, I think that's probably about accurate. 90 minutes in, yeah.
And that was mostly because of snow conditions?
Yeah. Snow and atmospheric conditions on that day. So the complex, I mean, obviously there's like two kind of issues, with this record and getting conditions. The first one was, I really had trouble getting beta. I found people were quite supportive of me doing the record, but either people, like a lot of people had a lot of different opinions about how it should be done. A lot of people just didn't really know. Some people who did know intentionally wouldn't tell me things about, how to do the route fast. So we didn't know what the right conditions are. And then, the route starts at, 3,004, starts at 1,000 meters and goes up to 4,800 meters. So there's just huge variation. So on May 20th, when I did it, the snow had not refrozen down low. The snow starts at about 2,000 meters and it was still quite slushy and I found very slow. So that was very concerning to me. And it's also quite a bit more dangerous because the chance of you falling in a crevasse is much higher. And then also on that day, it was quite cloudy. I mean, it was actually raining on me on the glacier when I ended up turning around at about 2,700 meters or so.
Okay.
So,
and I mean, I remember the snow was slushy as far as I went for the nutrition drop, and it was noticeably different on Wednesday past. I remember like poking it and kicking it as soon as we were starting to see snow, and it felt like there was a little bit of a crust on top.
Yeah.
So the snow was much better.
Yeah, and it actually was a problem. So something it took me a long time to realize is right now in the mountains around here, it's not getting below 0 degrees Celsius at night, below 2,600 meters or so. But we do need it to freeze down to 2,000 meters. And so what you're relying on is basically it being the humidity being low enough that the wet snow, basically the wetness in the snow evaporates and that draws heat out of the snow and causes it to freeze, even though the temperature does not go below freezing. So it's like enormously complicated. It's not like you could just put a thermometer up there and just look at some remote thermometer and be like, okay, it's going to be frozen up there. It's like super, super complex. And what we found on June 5th, when we did it a couple days ago, is it got way hotter the days, Monday, Tuesday, way hotter than we expected during the day, and then much colder at night. And so the whole thing was just like top to bottom was like an iceberg, which was very fast on the downhill, but quite slow, I think, on the uphill. Yeah.
Okay. So you were ultimately going for the record. The ski record was 5:05. Both records were set in 2013. The running was 4:57, and you ultimately ran 4:59.
Yeah.
How do you feel about getting the ski but missing out on the run?
Yeah, so I mean, I was going to kind of, going into this, I think I kind of was going to view it like there were a number of records I was kind of looking at as benchmarks. There was like the original ski record from 2003, which was 5 hours and 15 minutes. Then there was the record from 1990, running record, which stood for a long time, which was 5 hours and 10 minutes. And then there was Mateo's time, 5 hours and 5 minutes, and then Kilian's 4:57. So like, I think if I had broken 5:15, I was going to be, I would look at it as a success, especially because the conditions weren't that great. I think it certainly would have been nice to break Kilian's time, but at the same time, like obviously like the at the end of the day, the stopwatch is the stopwatch, and I didn't break Kilian's time, but like, Kilian also certainly had his own issues. He went with Matteo running on that effort, and I believe Matteo may even have been faster on the up, or at least they were pretty evenly matched on the up, but I think Kilian was a good deal faster on the down, just based on the videos I've seen, and Matteo did fall in a crevasse. So I think there's potential if Kilian run by himself, he could have gone a little bit faster. And then, so it's just like, if Kilian had been by himself and gone, 5 or 6 minutes faster, then, I mean, it's just, you can just play this what if game, saying like, I think at the end of the day, I think I would, even if I'd broken the time, I think I'd still want potentially to come back, because I think the potential, even if I'd broken the time by a minute, if I'd been 3 minutes faster, because like, I think the potential is in good conditions that route could go 20 minutes faster or so if you had good uphill conditions. But I think those conditions are just, I think there was one day this season where it was really like that. But
there seems to be so many variables in this route for it to be good. Like we talked briefly about the bob, and there's 2 or 3 things that could make a good or a bad time there. Whereas this, I mean, there's maybe a dozen factors that play into it.
And the hardest thing is I mean, there's many aspects that are really challenging, but like, even like the forecasts were supposed to be so accurate. Like all these models, a lot of the models I'll look at will have like some sort of probability measurement. They were all very high. It was going to be, very good weather, light winds, very sunny, and still like it ended up being much cloudier than we expected and like much windier. And so it's like, you think you can control at least for like the weather when you check it the night before, but yeah, not even that. And so the 2003 ski record and the 2013 ski record, both of those, Matteo, Stefan Bras, Pierre Genoux, these are like 3 of like the best French ski mountaineers, most connected, they live in this area and everything. And all of them had, I would say, certainly less than optimal conditions. I don't know who between us had the worst conditions, but, Pierre Genoux in 2013. So Pierre Genoux did 5 hours and 15 minutes in 2003 with Stefan Bras. And then in 2013, after Matteo went 5 hours and 5 minutes, Pierre Genoux was interviewed, and he's like, well, if conditions were better, like someone's going to go much faster, and it's unfortunate that like here, 11 years later, I'm saying the exact same thing. Like, oh, if conditions were better, someone could go a lot faster. So it's like, damn, you think forecasting would get better, but yeah, it's just so many variables. It's so complex. Yeah.
So do you think May, June is the best time to do it?
Yeah, so Matteo won't really talk to me about what exactly he did, and I can't really figure out what he did, because he did it in 2013, which was a very cold year with a lot of snow, and he did it May 3rd. And so my feeling is the trail must have been covered in snow, so I think he must have skied from quite low on the mountain, maybe 600 meters lower than what I did. The section that I ran. I think he might have skied to La Parra, to and from La Parra, potentially. Wow. So if you want to do it in that style, it has to be done early in the year. I think maybe that style would be better. I don't know with climate change if that's like really, I don't know how viable. I mean, you probably could have done that. It's complex, because it's just very, I think I did it in kind of the same style as Stefan Bras and Pierre Genoux did it, skiing and running from the same place. And if you want to do it in that style, I think, May and potentially early June. I think I was a little bit late, but it was just when the conditions when the weather was good, is a good time. But I think maybe if you want to maybe do it like how Matteo did, maybe a little bit earlier in the season, maybe take a little bit of a different route up high. That's the more kind of like winter route of the corridor, I think is possible. But yeah, like as it was, I had to ski over like 3 sections of like grass, and all of them I like skied into them and like kind of crashed, and then had to like waddle with my ski boots on, and then or skis and ski boots on over the like little rib of grass, ski again, hit the next one, and then like the final one was just like bushes, and I was able to just like point it through and just ski over them like right above where you stage the nutrition. So already it was melting out. So yeah, June I think maybe getting a little bit late for skiing. Yeah.
You do seem like you might be hard on gear.
Yeah. Like this one is bad because I have had issues with, gear breaking unexpectedly in the past. And like, you never know just like what weird shit is going to happen with gear. And so I have like a training setup that I train on, and then I have a race setup I only use for racing.
Okay.
And the gear I had for this, I'm pretty sure the ski boots, I'd only skied them one day before just to make sure, they were fine. And the skis, I just skied them a couple of times maybe before. And I mean, yeah, I think the ski boots are fine. I think the skis are okay, but like, yeah, I mean, I did ski over a fair bit of grass with them on. And when I was running down, I was like coming under the bridge that goes to the tunnel, and there was like this electrical, box, and the skis, like I ran full speed, and the skis just like, like a gong, just like banged off of them as I went by. I was like, oh, that's not good. And they're like hitting on every rock as you're going down. And I mean, I don't know if you saw the photo, but like the skis rubbed against my ice axe and like rubbed all like the anodization or whatever on the steel off, and the skis bounced against my crampon pocket where the crampons were and ripped the bottom of the bag all open. And it's like, all this stuff was like basically new. It was like, because I bought all this stuff, it's, well over $2,000 worth of equipment. I mean, I think a lot of it's still in okay, it's good enough condition, but some of it is certainly kind of destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just touch on the boots, because there was a sort of a malfunction on one of the boots.
Yeah.
And we were chatting earlier on about this, and it's at least 2 minutes plus of
you know better than me.
of time fucking around with that, because it took me a while to catch you with the drone, and you were already, I could see in the distance, you were already bent over.
Yeah.
But then whenever I got into the position and filmed you with the drone, it was 156 or 154, something like that. You stationary before you grabbed the poles and started to skin.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Like, that's got to like pull at the heart a little bit. Like, 2 minutes are pretty important for this one.
Yeah. It's very frustrating. So basically what happens is these are a pair of Pure Genou Race Pro full carbon skimo boots, and they use this kind of like, if you have just downhill skied in a resort, like these boots would like look completely foreign, because they use like a very bizarre system that changes them over from kind of uphill mode to downhill mode, and it's basically a rope that wraps around the top of the cuff and tightens it to your leg. And essentially it's like a loop of rope, and it runs through like a bunch of kind of like different routing points, and a buckle on my backpack went inside the loop, kind of low down on the boot. And while I was running up the hill, and while I pulled the skis off of my bag, the buckle pulled the rope out of the tensioning, the routing kind of mechanism. And so, I'm like so amped that I just looked down, and I couldn't figure out what happened, because I wasn't really thinking that was even an option for something that could happen. And I assumed that it must have broken, kind of the rope kind of goes underneath the insole in the boot. And I assumed it must have broken something down underneath. And I messed with it for a couple of minutes, and part of me was like, well, should I just stop now and wait, like, until tomorrow and fix this? Because, well, not tomorrow, because I'd probably be too tired, but like, am I only going to be able to ski down with these boots? Like, what's the point? Like, this actually could be quite dangerous if I go up with a pair of broken boots like this. And because I couldn't tell what was wrong. And in the end, I just came to the conclusion, like, I'm just going to go up, and I've got another 3 hours to think about how I'm going to fix this until I get to the top and need to actually ski down. And I mean, I wish it's hard to like, say anything, but maybe in hindsight, I should have just come to that conclusion a little bit quicker. Like, I can't like just look real quick. Okay, I can't figure this out. Let me just figure it out as I'm going uphill, because in the end, what ended up happening is I got to the summit, and I was hoping to see somebody. A lot of times somebody would be out on the mountain with the same pair of boots, and I was hoping to see somebody who had the same pair of boots who could fix them.
Would you give me your boot?
Yeah, on that. But I like ran onto the summit, and I was like, I need help. And like some like French guy came up to me, and he's like, is everything okay? What's wrong? And I was like, and I handed him a ski strap, and I was like, I'm going to take my crampons off. Just like put the ski strap on my boot, because I can't tighten it. I can't get any tightness in it. So he put the strap on, and I mean, the boots skied fine. once the strap fell down like halfway down the mountain. I should have stopped and retighten it, but it only added like a minute. So yeah, really like the time that took forever was me trying to figure it out. But yeah, it's painful, and it's just like with something this complex, like something like that is gonna go wrong. Like when I did Mount Rainier for time, I had a similar issue, but I got very lucky that the problem only manifested right after I finished. But for some reason, there wasn't any screw lock on very crucial screw in the boots. And so I skied up and down Mount Rainier, like, set the record. And then my friend and I went to lunch, and I kept my ski boots on. So literally just walked across the parking lot, drove, got out of the car, and I got out of the car and the screw fell out of the side of the boots. Like it was just barely in there, and it just waited until then. So sometimes you get really lucky, and sometimes, I've never even heard of that happening, like the strap going inside the loop and pulling the rope out. But, sometimes that happens. So.
It comes back to these things that nothing's ever 100% perfect, but
yeah,
doesn't make it any easier to swallow.
Yeah. And I think the funny thing is like I was thinking about it, like my fingers were it took me a while to like route the string later back through. So I think even if I had known, at least, I guess I couldn't have like waited as long, but I don't think I could have fixed it out there because my fingers were just too cold. It would take too much time. So
okay,
yeah. But
so your partner Anna also did both attempts.
Yeah,
and I become familiar with Anna through the process, but also maybe in the months leading up to it with all of the training and the resharing of Instagram posts. You just see so much content. Yeah. What was it like preparing for the same speed record with your partner?
Yeah,
and then also doing it twice on the same day together.
Yeah, and just to say one thing, like the first day we did it, I turned around. So Anna was expecting to take a bit longer than me both days, and we kind of felt like the timing would be equally, the same times or optimum for both of us. So she basically planned on starting before me and finishing slightly after me. So that first time we attempted it, she was about 30 minutes ahead of me when I turned around, and she kept going, and she went and summited and came back down in pretty bad conditions. But yeah, so overall, I think it was great because, it was great to have somebody, there as like a sounding board to like discuss all this stuff with and to brainstorm. And, that was like a huge advantage. And then, both of us were living in the van, and, the same kind of training was advantageous to both of us. So we were able to like do the training together, which was a lot of fun. So, I think in those respects, it was quite nice. I think, Anna, like sometimes I felt a little bit, bad almost in some ways, because like some of the ways that I have like prepared in the past have, like, sometimes I would always default to like, I'm just going to do like the more extreme thing. That's like, you have two options. Like one of them is like pleasant and like returns like 90% results, and one of them is unpleasant, returns 91% results. And it's like, well, I'm going to do the unpleasant thing. It's like, and a lot of times that isn't good in the long run because it just is not constructive, even to getting to the fastest time repeatedly, like doing that type of thing. So I think Anna kept me a bit more grounded and stopped doing like, kind of self-destructive, some of the self-destructive kind of like behaviors around altitude, especially. But, so yeah, no, it was quite nice. And so Anna and the last things I told her before we started was, I was like, well, it's a pretty good chance one of us is going to break the record at least. And, in the end, we both, there wasn't a women's ski record. Anna was the only, or the current female, record is running. And it's Hillary Girardi last year, 7 hours and 25 minutes. And Anna went and Anna did 7 hours and 29 minutes. So she was 4 minutes off. But like, really I would say the records are not really the same because, Hillary took a slightly different route that was, a bit slower, I would say, but Hillary also had like a lot more support on route and, wasn't carrying her kit from the church and back. And that's just kind of the style of the running versus the skiing has always kind of been, carrying all your kit the entire time. So I mean, no, I think Anna put down an extremely solid time, and yeah, because it's that little bit at the beginning and the end, carrying your ski kit up to the snow line is brutal, especially when I didn't really have any splits to look at because Killian's record and Mateo's record predated, kind of like handheld GPS is largely. Killian's effort is on Sunto moves count, and it's like, I tried to get it and I couldn't get anything, but at least Anna did have splits to look at, and so it's like, damn, like you can see, like how much of a deficit you're at just getting to the snow line because you're carrying 10 pounds of equipment. So yeah.
That's it. That's interesting, yeah, because Hillary's was last May, so the Strava's there. It's easy to look and train or know how close or far away you are.
Yeah.
Do you have any appetite, either of you, actually, to try the running only?
I think initially maybe, but I think for both of us, like at least I think we're both of the opinion that the running is if you were to take like the same athlete and had them run in perfect conditions and ski in perfect conditions, the skiing would be faster. But there are more perfect days for running, or there are more good days for running where the ski conditions, I mean, I haven't been here long enough to know, but I think they may come, it might be once every several years. I was like looking on Instagram, and like somebody made a reel of skiing the mountain on May 19th, the day that I, say is like, was the day. And like people in the comments were like, oh, these were mythical conditions. And it's like, fuck. So I think like to break in my mind, like if I went and ran it, I think Killian was probably getting close to the ceiling of how fast somebody could run that damn thing. Like maybe somebody could run faster up potentially, but like I think his down is like crazy fast. And like, I don't even know if I'd want to even attempt to do that, and to go and to attempt to do it and to run, just a couple minutes faster just to get the record. I mean, I don't know, like that would be certainly cool, but I think it would be way cooler to like, if I'm going to come back one time, I would much rather come back and wait for a good ski day and do it on skis fast. Cause I think that's just, much better. And like the ceiling is much higher for what's possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that something that you're seriously considering for as soon as next year, even?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, who knows? Well, I think I've always joked that like eventually I'll get to the point where I've like accumulated enough FKTs that I've attempted that I'll just go into a season with like zero plans and just kind of wherever the conditions look good, just go back and just like redo, old ones that I've done that have been broken or not broken. So I could see that, yeah, potentially for next year. I'm kind of like running out of suitable mountains for these ski records. There's like a couple left in the US, but yeah, also the ski records are kind of unpleasant in many ways. So I don't know how many more I want to do, but yeah.
Okay. Moments after, it must have been within 5 minutes of finishing, you had a phone call with Killian at the church, and I know that he had helped you with information leading up to this more than most. Touch on how he helped, and maybe if anything of interest you want to share from that conversation.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of funny. So like I used to, after the Bob and after Denali, like I would occasionally, Killian, would respond to like, I would ask him some questions on Instagram, but sometimes he would like leave me on red, and I would always get like, there was a time where I was like, oh, Killian like doesn't like me, or like, I don't really like Killian, or like whatever. And then eventually he messaged me and he's like, hey, like, I have someone manage my Instagram, and they'll just like open my DMs and like not respond to people. So like just like message me on WhatsApp if you want a response. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I mean, yeah, he's awesome. And yeah, once when I came over, and I didn't really have, no one was really, it was hard to get information. And so I didn't really know what else to do. And so I just like reached out to Killian, and I was like, do you know anything about the ski record? And yeah, he helped me out, and kind of really like the questions I had is just like, what line do people take? Because, every single person I talked to would tell me something different. And typically the response people would give me is, you need a much colder year with a much lower snow line, and you need to ski and from much lower on the mountain, which I don't think is true. I think what we did a couple days ago may be the fastest way. I don't necessarily, going to and from La Parra may be faster, but I didn't even know really what trail people took up, because there's a couple different options that do kind of make sense. So yeah, no, Killian was quite helpful with that. And then after I got done, he was the first person I called, and we just talked for like 2 minutes, and he just kind of congratulated me, and we talked about conditions kind of real quick, and it's just to an extent you kind of just have to get lucky, and then you have to be fast enough when the problems do materialize on race day that you have enough of a pad that you can kind of survive them. And he could survive, Matteo falling in a crevasse and, the other issues that he had, and still run 4:57. Whereas my boots kind of the boots and the really icy conditions kind of enough for to knock me out. So, yeah.
Is there anything that Killian isn't good at? Like manners, being friendly and helpful, throwing out his WhatsApp?
Yeah.
Short distance, long distance, you fucking name it.
I'll let you know. Yeah. No, I got nothing. Yeah. I think I speak English better than he does, but I think he's got me beaten on about 6 other languages. So yeah.
So let's move on to training a little bit. You appear to do a lot of volume. The stuff that goes on public and Strava is basically just the race efforts. So talk about kind of volume in terms of hours per week leading up to this, and maybe where were you at the start of this and where were you before a taper, whatever that might look like?
Yeah, so what's really, really hard about an effort like this is it's really challenging because you don't know when to start your taper, because you don't know when you're going to race. And so, if when I did the Grand Teton last year, I had a slightly lower threshold for a good weather day, if that makes sense. And so the problem was I ended up thinking that the good weather day was continuously a week out for 3 weeks straight. So I essentially had 3 weeks of very light volume going into the Grand Teton. And I think prior to the Grand Teton, I may have said, oh, I don't think that matters. All that training is in the bank from a long time. 3 weeks of light training may actually be quite good. I don't know. The Grand didn't go great. Maybe that was just the limit of my fitness. But I think also maybe that taper was too long. So for this effort, I kind of intentionally raised my threshold for what I would consider a good enough weather day to initiate a taper. I was doing. It's honestly, it's hard to say off the top of my head, because I feel like a lot of times when people are in a conversation like this, they will always overestimate how much fucking training they've been doing.
We'll take that into account.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's reasonable to say I did not have a single week, except maybe the week when I first came over to France and was traveling over. I think it's reasonable to say I don't think I had a week dip below probably 19 hours so far this year, except for maybe the last week leading up, and also the week that I went for it on May 20th. I think pretty much most weeks were between 20 and 24 hours. If there were any weeks where a volume maybe took a hit, it was the weeks that I had a lot of struggle with altitude on this one, which is in the US is not something we really have to think about all that much, because you can really, there's dozens of places you can live above 2,000 meters, and there's a handful of places year round you could live above 3,000 meters, driving to your car up there.
Yeah.
Whereas here it's way more challenging. If you want to live above 2,000 meters, you have Ting, and you have Val Thorens, which isn't Ting and Val Thorens are not really even towns. They're just ski resorts.
Yeah.
And then you have there's I know a spot in Austria that's kind of similar. I don't really know as much about that. And then Cervinia is above 2,000 meters, and it's an actual town. really. So yeah, we spent a lot of time in Trevina prepping for this, but the problem is like, when you're talking like short weather windows and learning the route and learning the conditions and keeping a very close eye on things, like Trevina is only 2 hours away, but you miss out on like a lot of those like marginal weather days where you maybe could get up and get some familiarization with the route. So we ended up coming back here, and I was sleeping. The most convenient hut to sleep at is Cosmiques, which is at 30. It's like 3,400 meters, right? I think it's like it's 11,800 feet. And I mean, it's just brutal. Like I just would not recover very well up there, and I had a lot of trouble. I accepted like, okay, the training volume is going to take a hit, because I'm going to prioritize sleeping up at altitude, for 4 nights a week, and then sleeping down low for the rest of them. But it's hard because like if you want to do a long day or a hard training day, do you do that? Because if I were to do that, I would sleep worse that night. But if I were to do it after sleeping at altitude, the performance would be lower because my recovery was worse from sleeping up at altitude. So I have since learned I was like better off sleeping lower than sleeping up higher and getting that altitude benefit, but taking a big hit to the training quality. So all this to say, yeah, I mean, I try to keep it generally, like if I'm just training normally, I'm sleeping, below, let's say like 2,700 meters, I will be trying to hit, 24 hours of total volume every week, and of which, 1 to 2 hours will be, some sort of high intensity work. But yeah, the higher I'm sleeping, like sometimes that can take a hit. Yeah.
So we're saying maybe 19 at the start of the block, maybe 24.
No, I would say those weeks when it took a hit. No, I mean I've been certainly like in the U.S. like it was 24 hours, like every single week in early February, January, December, November, and then those weeks where it kind of did take a hit and drop a little bit lower were like probably mainly weeks in like early May and in April when I was like trying to sleep up in the huts here. Yeah,
I'm kind of interested in the percentage of training that's actually running. I've seen you run once in town. You ran down the street whenever I was just going out for a walk with the dogs, but you seem to always be skiing.
Yeah.
So how do you perfect and keep the running legs? Like, for example, last year when I was here, I went back to London, and all I'd been doing was basically up and down runs.
Yeah.
And when I went back and had to run on canals and flat stuff, my legs were killing me.
Oh,
I had to
really?
readjust the flat, which had never happened before.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So what sort of percentage of running are you doing compared to skiing?
I mean, there was certainly a time in the U.S., I would say all of December, all of January, where there was no running. I would say February, maybe there was maybe a February, March, just a tiny bit, maybe in the latter half of March, because originally I thought this was going to be doing this in mid-April. I did start running a little bit more in the latter half of March, probably. The ratio, I would say the past couple weeks, probably I've tried to like, as the skiing has gotten worse, I've probably been doing a little bit less, but I'd say generally the last 6 weeks or so, I've tried to like mimic the route, so essentially like 1/3 of the week is running and 2/3 of the week is skiing, and that running generally mimics what the route looks like. So probably 1/3 of it was kind of like runnable roads and stuff, and 2/3 of it was like steeper kind of like trail running and stuff.
And then in terms of intensity,
Yeah,
what are you doing in terms of intensity? Like whenever I've watched you, on the first attempt, I was at La Para, and you came up, you were jogging up, and that whole route is fluctuates from 18 to 35%. And you were jogging, now you were huffing and puffing, but you were smiling. So like what level of intensity are you training at? What volume or what percentage of intensity do you have?
Yeah, so occasionally I'll wear a heart rate strap, and I would say my aerobic volume, like the normal volume that I'm doing, the bulk of my volume, I mean, it will I just wore it a couple of days. I don't know if it got above like 120 beats per minute. So like, quite, I would say like, I'm just talking aerobic, easy base training right now. But like, I look at like a lot of, pros on Strava, and like, like Petterendal. I think these were back-to-back days. So this would have been, I think maybe today, June 6th or June 5th and June 4th, one of, back-to-back days. But like both days he like CR'd, like, set the course record on Strava on like very, I think, quite competitive hill climb segments. And I mean, he's quite fast and quite accomplished, but like I would not fucking do that. Like those seem like two fucking hard efforts on back-to-back days. Like, I mean, I look at a lot of like pros training, and like I think my base work is like much easier than most people are doing. Like I know Jim Walmsley like used to go like really hard during all of his low intensity work. So, and then for me, the high intensity stuff, I do try to make it quite intentional, and I do try to make it quite hard. Generally for this block, I was just trying to like maximize time at intensity during those sessions. So not maximize, I guess, but I was doing between, I would say, 50 and 80 minutes of time at intensity. And that looked like all sorts of different things. Like I had some workouts where I would do, basically I just like, I'll just kind of like look at, I'll know that I want to hit 50 to 80 minutes of intensity, and I'll just kind of like look at whatever I've got that day and what the conditions are like, and I'll just like make some shit up. So like there were days in Trevino where like the weather was bad, and I would just go and do like, I would like drive down the road from Trevino ways, and then I would just go back up the road and do like, 12 by 6 minutes or something on a 1 minute rest, just like back up the hill and then just like, run back down at the very end. Or, there are days where, the conditions would be better and I have an opportunity maybe to like do a longer Strava segment. And, like on my, I'm not on my watch, it's a Garmin watch, and you can do like the live segment feature. Yeah. And so I would just go and I would just like, maybe find a longer kind of like segment, and I would just always keep it, sub maximal, like not like completely, kill myself. And that's less, I think, for physical and more for like the mental, because I'm just like smashing myself mentally.
You have to get up for those hard, super hard efforts. Like I have to like psych myself up to get out for those.
Yeah, I know for sure. Yeah, and I eventually I just like would crater if I did like a bunch of weeks back to back of that. So, yeah, I know it looked like all different things, and kind of when I was in the U.S., I was doing all of my speed work on the incline treadmill, and I would put it at 30%, and I would use ankle weights that were, a little over a kilo, that kind of represented the weight of my ski setup, and ski and boot and binding and skins. And I would use like a hiking, walking, skinning stride on the incline treadmill, and I would do workouts at 30% on the incline treadmill, and like you could be super dialed with that. And I would do a little bit of sessions like that on the Stairmaster and incline treadmill here. But the sessions, I would say, here have been more specific and have been more kind of like mainly skinning and some running, whereas in the US, I kind of like built the base of high intensity work on the incline treadmill, where you can like really control the variables and be very kind of like specific. And like I was testing lactate for those sessions, but I mean, I find testing lactate to be, I find that like naturally I'll kind of do the workouts in the right zone as it is. And I don't know if it's a user error or what other problems I have, but I find testing lactate kind of challenging, and sometimes I'll get values that are kind of all over the fucking place. And then it's one thing to test lactate on the treadmill. I mean, granted, testing lactate on the treadmill has its own issues, because like, I've had gym employees fucking yell at me and all sorts of stuff, but that's its own thing. But testing lactate outdoors is like really hard. Especially when you're skiing, and especially if you're doing speed in the ski resort. It's like one thing to be outdoors on a trail, and maybe like you can run up and like stage the stuff at the top, and like you have it all like, laid out, and then you just do reps and you can test it at the top. But when you're at a ski resort, you can't just like leave it out there. And so I would, there were a couple of times at Grand Monte up in Argentière, and I would like get to the top, and like, the wind gusts would like blow like these strips all over the fucking place, and there's like bloody, towels going everywhere. My hands are so cold, there's no blood in my fingers. And so, yeah, I mean, I think occasionally when I did wear a heart rate strap, like these sessions would be like, I think would kind of be classified as like low, like in a 4 or 5 zone model, it'd be like just above aerobic threshold, like low zone 3, high zone 2 is typically where I'd be for these sessions. I mean, they felt quite hard because the time at intensity was fairly long, but
that lower end of zone 3, you can spend a lot of time in. Is that where would that be similar to your kind of race effort on the likes of those parts of the run?
I think so. I think the intensity for the speed I was generally doing was slightly above race intensity. Yeah. So I ran with my ski boots and I ran with my kit from the start up to the snow line back in early May. And that remains my fastest time. Even though I felt like I was doing a pretty sustainable pace I could do for a race effort, I didn't touch that time. The 2 times I went for it's just a couple minutes faster. But yeah, so I'd say generally my speed is like slightly above race intensity on this. Yeah.
Just pausing for a minute to remind you of our great sponsors, TORQ Nutrition, discount code in the description, but also AFRN10. The code is only available for UK customers, and also the wonderful GOREWEAR, makers of, owners of, creators of Gore-Tex. I Run Over Mountains 30, global discount code, 30% off. It's not fucking bad, is it? So give those guys some love, thank our sponsors, but let's get back to the show. So you seem to be super into like detail. Like the last, even thinking about what you mentioned, 5 minutes ago about that extra 1%, you seem to focus and try to maximize the potential of all of these variables that are within your control. To what level do you take that on like for mental preparation?
I'm meditating and visualizing prior, or like. Yeah. No, I'm not terribly good at that. I used to do a fair amount of visualization work before stuff, and meditation I've always kind of been like back and forth with, but I haven't done it in a long time. I mean, I'd say it's a good idea. I'd say the visualization is, it's like you almost can get like a practice rep sometimes, and you can think of some stuff that maybe you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. I think as I've gotten more experience, like there are times in the past where I would do like visualization prior to racing and I would think of all sorts of shit that I'd forgotten about, and now I think I'm just kind of experienced enough where the value like has kind of maybe declined a little bit, at least as far as like thinking of things I forgot. On the actual like physical performance side, yeah, maybe there's some aspects of it that would be helpful that I haven't tapped into. It's sometimes it can be hard. It can be tricky. I mean, obviously you have to, and like that's a lot of what you just said. Sometimes it'd be hard to like do those like 0.1% things when like in the days prior, like I'm just so focused on like the fucking weather because like that's gonna make a 10% difference. And so, yeah, it's a good idea to work on those tiny things to make sure like the transitions and everything are dialed. But it's like, it can feel a little useless sometimes to work on those tiny things when like you're going to have this like massive dice roll on the day of that's going to completely throw all these like tiny things out the window. Quite likely, but.
So what do you think your main strengths are? Like, is it?
Yeah.
I'll throw a couple options out here for you. Give you a bone. I mean, do you think that you're a much better skier up or down, or runner up or down? Do you feel like you've got like a good mental strength for like pushing hard or overcoming or problem solving, like these types of things? Where do you think your strengths are?
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely, I don't really know, to be completely honest with you. I kind of go back and forth, like when I did the Grand, I sometimes I think I'm a better hiker than I am a runner, because I think like you look at like, people who are good, you look at like, I think being bigger, I think maybe I can take a longer stride, and my hiking maybe can be a bit more efficient. And so if that's true, maybe my skinning is a bit faster than my running. I mean, I don't know. Like when I did the bob, like I got a lot of good data out of the bob, And like I could see I was consistently a bit faster on the downhills than Killian, and he was a bit faster on the uphills than me. But at the same time, Killian had a hotter day than me. So if someone has well, I guess that would, never mind. But like, so that would indicate I'm a better downhiller. But I mean, there have been other times where like here, I thought my downhill was perfect. I thought I didn't make a single mistake. And I thought like, I would be lucky to replicate that downhill again. And, I did that downhill and I had, mutants on. And I consider the mutant like not a great uphill shoe, but I consider it like the best downhilling shoe you could possibly buy. And, Pierre Jeannot and Stefan Bros, from the photos, they look like they were wearing like blown out New Balance, like road shoes. And on the way down, Stefan Bros fell in a crevasse, and they went from the summit to the church in an hour and 7 minutes, and I went in an hour and 4 minutes. And so it's like, okay, I consider myself to be quite a good downhiller, and I only went 3 minutes faster than these guys, despite the fact I had much better shoes. And then like I didn't, I was alone. I think that's probably an advantage, and certainly I didn't fall in a crevasse on the way down. So it's like, I really, I go back and forth. When I did the Grand, I was like 7 minutes off on the uphill. And my conclusion from the Grand was like, I just don't have the body type for like the shorter uphill stuff because, I'm just too big, I'm just too heavy. My power to weight is too poor. And then I have, on the other hand, like, I think, yesterday, I think that was like a very solid time despite the bad conditions on the up. And then I've also had like some success on like some shorter segments in the US, and like I had a pretty good tempo of like the VK here and everything. So it's like, it's just, I don't know what the deal is. I think maybe if I raced, I would maybe have like better data points, but it seems like every single thing I do, there's like, it's just a different outcome, So I'm not really sure. I mean, I think the one other thing is like, I don't, when it comes to comparing, if you were a skimo racer, you would have a much better idea of how you compare on the downhill versus other people. But like here, like the conditions are so different, and so you see like, oh, if you went faster or slower than someone down, like your first thought is like, okay, the conditions were different, so it's really hard to compare apples to apples and like really draw any conclusions, unfortunately.
So just before we draw a line under the training part and move on to nutrition, give me a number on RPE for the up and then the down. What for the effort?
For this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to say. I found that like the longer time that I've trained, like the higher the RPE that can be sustained. And I think that makes a lot of sense because, the more training you're doing, you're basically, improving your body's ability to like, absorb and utilize that lactate. And so like maybe the higher level of lactate, well, not really, but like the higher level of work, I mean, whatever. I don't really know exactly how it works, but the more, I think the higher my aerobic capacity comes, the closer it comes to my ceiling, the less fast twitch I have. Basically, like the RPE that I'm holding is like something I would have thought if I held that RPE 3 years ago, I would have thought it was unsustainable. And now I know that I can kind of run it quite a bit out. It's hard to say. I would say it's quite high. Yeah, I would say it's quite high. I mean, you saw me like, I think I was like breathing quite hard.
I got the impression that was kind of more just how you did it,
oh, really?
Rather than the effort. Like,
yeah,
some people use like the exhale as part of their kind of rhythm. Like if you think about weightlifting and things like that.
Yeah.
Some people will do. I assumed that was when Jack's pushing it. He blows a little bit like that.
No, I mean, I don't. I don't know. I mean, I feel. I feel like I'm working quite hard. Yeah.
So like,
but it's sustainable.
An RP, like
it's hard to say. Yeah. I would say 8.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's always hard with RP because like, I think a lot of times like my mind will really, like if an RPE, if you're doing a 1 minute climb and I was holding that intensity I did over there, it'd be like, oh, this is fucking, this isn't an RPE 8. But like, because I all have in my mind, like, oh shit, this is how much more I have to do. Like that's constantly in there. And I think that makes it feel much harder in the moment. So like I have so much trouble, with my athletes as a coach, like describing how hard speed work can be because, it's just, I find it really hard to articulate, perceived exertion personally.
My coach hates it whenever I compare, when I tell him that an RP7 is, a 166, 67 heart rate. Like, how are you comparing these two things?
Yeah.
Like, they quit. But that's how I've done it, just 3 years of having a heart monitor on and then kind of like matching the two up. You're right. Sure, when you add time into the equation, it changes it all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's relative. All right, that's enough on training. I've annoyed you enough there. So let's touch a bit on nutrition, and let's go back to before the start. So like in the 24 hours before the start, are you like, I hate to use the term carb loading or whatever, because it feels like a road running term or whatever.
Yeah.
But what's nutrition look like in the day before?
Yeah. It's funny because I think that is a very good question because it's something I do think about a lot. But it's nothing anybody's ever asked me. I think like personally, like I do have some issues. Like I was talking about the Grand Teton because I'm so much like physically larger than other runners. I do have like some body image issues. And so like, just to an extent going into something like this, like always in my mind is like, how fucking big I am. And so it's like, typically like when I'm doing high training volume, it's like, okay, this makes sense. I'm eating this much, I'm doing this much volume, but always like in the days prior, I'm like, fuck, I'm getting fat right now. Like, this is like not good. And then like the funny thing is I'll go and, this just proves it's all in my fucking head because I'll go and race. And then in the days prior, I'm like, God, I'm so fucking thin. I need some fucking food. I'm dying here. So it's just like so dumb. But 24 hours prior, I would say generally my normal, I'm not really trying to carb load. I would say I'm just trying to more or less eat normally. And because there isn't, I'm not training like, that those calories will get me much further. And I would say I'm eating less than I would be, if I was actually training for sure. I mean, I'm eating less absolutely because normally I have to eat quite a bit to keep up with the training. I would say in the 24 hours prior though, I'm trying to, focus on carbs, like limit fiber a bit. And I would say my largest meal is probably, like breakfast through like 3 p.m. of the day prior. And like when I did the Grand Teton, the night before, I ate what was probably a normal amount of pasta, like when I'm at my high training volume, but I ate it at like fucking, 6 p.m. And it probably was like a little bit extra, the amount that I ate. And like, I mean, I had never experienced it before, but I felt awful the next day. Like I felt super bloated. I found it really hard to eat in the first hour of the Grand because I still felt like that pasta was like right in me. So yeah, I do try to walk that line and like, get enough calories, but not overdo it. And certainly try to like focus on eating as much as I can early in the day. And then just kind of eating enough to keep me satiated, like in the back half of the day. But yeah, it's kind of it's kind of a tightrope a bit.
And then what about breakfast? You started at 5:08 a.m. Are you getting up and eating at 3?
Yeah, no. So I used to do that. I don't anymore. I used to also do, I used to, like for every race effort, basically before this, for the last year and a half, I've done the Morton bicarb, and now I'm kind of just at the conclusion it's kind of BS. I mean, I think with unrelated, but I think with like bicarb and ketones, there are non-responders and responders, and I think maybe I'm just someone who doesn't really benefit as much. I'm not really sure. Also, I just find it kind of annoying to have to wake up that early. I find generally my stomach is quite good, so I can get away with eating stuff fairly close. I'm trying to even remember what I ate that morning. But I mean, May 20th, I just like had some pastries. I had like, some like pan chocolat or something, probably 45 minutes prior, an hour prior. And this time I think was kind of similar. I think I had some small pastries and maybe some bread with some peanut butter and Nutella on it.
So this is the sort of shit that pisses off the layperson, because like Joe Blogs, who is, not able to do something like this. Your average guy that's out there running ultras is getting up and doing his Morton drink mix and having his porridge 2 hours before the start, and trying to like do all of these things that we hear about, and you're having a pan of chocolate and a couple of pastries.
I mean, I can say I certainly used to do that stuff, and I think maybe with time my stomach maybe has gotten more resilient. And the best place I think to experiment is like doing speed work, because doing speed work, I find it if you're doing speed work first thing in the morning, I find timing the calories and nutrition is fairly easy. But if I'm doing speed work later in the day, I find it so fucking hard to make sure that I'm not overly satiated, but there have been many times where I've done speed sessions and I'll be doing 80 minutes of intensity and I'll get, 40 minutes in, I'll be starving, So, I have put a lot of thought and experimented, doing those speed sessions when I'm eating and how much I'm eating. And I mean, I think it's just kind of, intuitive, and, it makes it seem like, a joke now that I'm just like, oh, I'm just going to eat some pastries. But it's like, that's what I found, like doing the speed work, like doesn't bother me so much. But yeah, I mean, if anything, I just try to eat some carbs and not much fiber. And then, if it were to be that I woke up super early and then I was getting closer to the race time and I was still hungry, like I always tell my athletes, like you have to be like really aggressive, but also careful. And so it's like, maybe you've woken up 2 hours prior, you've eaten, a fair amount. And then all of a sudden, you have to be checking in at an hour prior and 45 minutes prior. And the second you start to realize, oh, I actually might be hungry once I start this thing, you have to like then eat sooner, because like once you get super close to the race, like maybe you could, drink some, some sort of endurance, mix like Morton or something, but it becomes riskier and riskier as you get closer. For sure.
So what about the fueling for the actual race effort? I stashed Morton bottles for you and Anna. There was a couple of Morton gels in there. A couple of them were caffeine gels. Do you have a calorie stroke carb target per hour? And dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get 100 per hour. Generally, I find with the hardest thing for me on something like this, especially at altitude, is just like I'm breathing so fucking hard that like for me to eat, I really have to like come to a stop, like kind of deliberately eat and then like keep going, because like there have been times where I have been breathing really hard at altitude and I'll keep going and I'll like put my mouth on a bottle and like drink for like 5 seconds, then all of a sudden can't catch my breath, so I find that liquid is a little bit better for me, because I can kind of go, and I find it a little bit, because I've got poles in my hands, I find it easier just to put the flask up to my mouth, and then I can just kind of go and just like real quick, just squeeze it and just swallow like as much as I can, versus like getting a gel and like, kind of having to like swallow a little bit more and maybe have my breathing interrupted a little bit more. But no, I was shooting for 100 carbs an hour. I woke up and I had a double espresso right when I woke up. And then I think my first bottle was like the Morton like 320 caffeinated. And I think in the first hour, that's all I had. And then in the second hour, I had another Morton 320 uncaffeinated, and I may have had a Morton 160 gel during that time also. And then hours 3 and 4 were just, I was just taking Morton 320, trying to hit 100 carbs per hour, I think. And then right around hour 4 is where I summited. So I'd already downed those 2 bottles at that point. And I took a caffeinated gel I downed to 3 bottles at that point. And then right before I skied down, I downed a caffeinated gel. And then when I got to the cutoff where you had shortcut where you had stage aid, I just like drank some water real quick and like half of a 320 probably. I think I probably overestimated a little bit there, but yeah, generally, I think I probably hit 100 grams carbs per hour.
And would you be training at that kind of level as well? I mean, are you training the gut up to this?
I've always been kind of lucky with that and like not really needed to train it. I think the response to that now would maybe be that I should be pushing higher than 100 grams of carbs per hour, which is something I probably should do in the future. Generally in training, I'm just kind of eating to hunger, and it's just all, I very rarely will consume like actual endurance products during training. It's generally just like, chocolate and, different types of candy and pastries, a lot of Biscoff cookies. Yeah.
And so I've heard you mention before that you kind of run hot, and that's probably why you are the only person that's mostly naked on Mont Blanc during these attempts.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of your sodium sweat rate? No. Is it something that you try and factor in? I should take some salt, or?
Yeah, I think it's been a while since I've done an effort where I feel that's needed. Mainly because these efforts are just kind of, I think, too short. I don't think my sweat rate is so high that I need to worry about it on, an effort like this is, like just going backwards. Things I've raced is like this, is quite cold, obviously. So you're not sweating a ton, and it's only, 4 hours of uphill. And then the Grand Teton was just 3 hours. The Presidential Traverse was 3.5 hours. Denali was 10 hours, but again, quite fucking cold. Rainier, 3 hours, quite cold. Shasta, 2.5 hours, quite cold. So you'd have to go like all the way back to the Bob, something where I like worried about electrolytes. And for that, like I was supplementing like, electrolyte capsules, but that was something the Bob was something where the electrolytes I think were okay, but I really underdid the hydration, I think, particularly on like leg 4. So no, I haven't been tested, and I don't really worry about it for something like this. I think for something like this, I was a bit thirsty, which I was kind of surprised about. So I did, drink some extra water, but no electrolytes. Yeah.
So let's wrap it up, or get to the last chapter of this interview. I guess one of the main things that everyone keeps asking me is, what's he gonna do next? So what are the things that, like, maybe what are the FKTs that you haven't, that are in the back of your mind? Think someday I'd like to give that a go. Like, what about the Hug Traverse? It's like is the record for it's like 16 hours. It's 180.
You're talking running or skiing?
Skiing.
Yeah, I think record now is like high 14s. I think.
Right.
Maybe, but the hard thing with the Hout route for me is like I would want to do it on skis because that's been kind of proven to be the faster way, but it's almost like I'd have to go and do it, but it almost seems too flat. I don't really like skinning flats. I don't really like the low angle stuff. So, I mean, it's like really nice stats for a run. It's kind of similar to the Bob, but for a ski, it seems kind of flat. I don't know. Maybe I'm off there. Yeah. I mean, Mont Blanc and Denali last year were like the two that I was always kind of like building towards long term. And now I've kind of done them. So, I'm just trying to kind of figure that out. Yesterday, the folks, the skyrunning folks reached out to me and gave me a big for Trofeo Kima. So, I mean, I've been kind of thinking about that one for a bit now. So I think I probably will do Trofeo Kima. And then beyond that, like, I think Anna and I are going to go to Corsica just because she would want some time on the beach, and it would be kind of nice to kind of take a break from the higher mountains. And so, I mean, I kind of have been looking at the GR20, but like, that's like a long fucking way. Like the record is, I still think is around 30 hours or 28 hours. I mean, still, it's just a long time to be running.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I really tried to get into Marathon de Mont Blanc, the 90K, but now I'm kind of happy it didn't work out because the timing is quite close. But before, when I thought I was going to do Mont Blanc in early May, I was like, oh, this will be, kind of a perfect kind of flow. But marathon and Mont Blanc, I don't have a UTMB score, don't have an ITRA score, so they just like wouldn't give me a bib. But I mean, yeah, the skyrunning people have been quite a bit more nice. So, I mean, and then beyond that, I think like the Spaghetti Tour is like a link up of like 24,000 meter peaks in the Mount Erosive Massive, which I think has a quite fast time on it. It is quite technical. Like it seems like a very aesthetic line, but it does seem kind of a bit more technical. And I'm always torn because I really like the aesthetics of like the big kind of mountain efforts, and I really do like training for those, but I do really like the fitness side of just like, running like a fast VK or something. So it's hard, to kind of try to balance those two. But yeah, I mean, I do think at some point, maybe, I don't know if I'd actually want to train to it, but I do think it would be fun to do the Grand Canyon rim, 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 or, maybe do some more runnable stuff. But I would have to put in like some actual, like, running for sure for that.
Yeah, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Like, I mean, like, yeah, I'm like, I would have to probably skew to be able to do something like that fast. I mean, I'm guessing I would probably have to do like a lot of like road running, to like really get like my fitness kind of like up for that. So I don't know if I'd really want to do that. So
up until that point, everything you were mentioning was Europe, which was pleasing to hear. So
yeah.
Are you thinking you're going to spend a good bit more time over this side?
Yeah, no, I'll stay here for the year. Yeah, and I'll stay here for the rest of the season as far as racing. I think I'm over here right now, and I have the van. I might just, there certainly is enough stuff to, hold me over. But yeah, long term, I think maybe that like went well enough a couple days ago on the uphill that I think maybe I would give the Grand Teton like another shot. Like my conclusion was like, oh, I'm too big for the Grand Teton. There's no way. But now I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I could, go back and try to do that again. Because that's quite a classic one in the U.S. And we have a couple other, Long's Peak and Mount Whitney have, pretty, very, very fast records on them. So,
and of course, your van is British.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You have to drive it back to the UK to probably sell it, don't you?
No, I think we're going to keep it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we're going to keep it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, already, fucking Colin is, Colin Haley, who supported us. He's already, trying to let us lend it to him when we're not here. So, yeah, I think we'll probably hold on to it.
The van's hanging around.
Yeah.
So prior to the Bob, I remember you had an interest in Nolan's.
Yeah,
supported
I think I would.
David, is that something you're?
Yeah. I think Nolan's is pretty cool. I mean, again, like Nolan's, the GR20, like I did this 100-mile route on the Appalachian Trail in New Hampshire a couple years ago, like we call like the White's 100.
Yeah.
And that was 26 hours, extremely similar to the GR20, like very similar in technicality, very similar in vert. GR20 is like a tiny bit longer. And I got to the end of that and I was like, this is fucking too far. This is too much. I think part of the problem with White's is I came out way too hot. And then I was like trying to maintain that pace and was crushing myself. So maybe if I took a more reasonable pacing strategy, like something like that distance would be more palatable. But the way I did it that time was at least was very hard. So yeah, Nolan's and the GR20. I'm going to go kind of look at the GR20 and see, but I think it might be a little bit too far. Yeah, and then Nolan's I think would be cool, but yeah, maybe I don't know.
And any racing? As in sanctioned events that kind of tickled your fancy a little bit?
I think, well, yeah, I mean, Trofeo Kima, and then I think I was looking at your profile, and you have that reel of, what is it? Is it Grigne, or what is it, the Italian? It's one of your pinned reels.
The Grinja Sky Race, yeah. It alternates with Trofeo Kima, so it'll be back on next year.
Oh, I see. Okay, nice. I was like, yeah, that's quite close to Trofeo Kima. Yeah, I mean, those look pretty good.
It looks awesome, doesn't it? I want to do that race. Like, if you're doing a race and you have to have a helmet on, it sounds like a good thing, right?
It seems pretty full on. Yeah.
Any other things in the UK? What about
fucking Finley, is pissing me off with this little tranter round that he did. I love the tranter, so maybe I'd go back and give that another go.
That's kind of where I was going with the van, going back to the UK.
Oh, I see. I think it would be cool. I think Anna might be better suited and more capable to it than me, but I think the Coolin Ridge Traverse would be cool. I think it might be a little bit too hard, too technical for me. The tranter would be cool. I don't know. I don't know if I could do it, but I'd almost do the bob again and just try to take the time a little bit faster. I felt like I did pretty good the last time, and because I was pretty worked afterwards. I was really fucked up. So I don't know if I could really go any faster other than with better fitness. And I'd say the one other thing maybe with the bob is I could just do it in slightly better conditions. And I don't know if I was telling you, but I think for me the best conditions might be one of these really long, hot, dry high pressures and waiting and starting at 7 p.m. and doing it all in the dark, in the cold, at least when it's a little bit cooler. I think would be kind of it probably would be awful for everybody involved. No views, pacers are up all night, but I think it might be really fast and, kind of interesting because I had a little bit of issues last time with the heat and with hydration. So,
we have Finley's winter solstice bob record. So that's always out there. You could stick it to him after the tranters.
Yeah. Well, I think I have to go back, and the tranter would be a little more pleasant, maybe. But that was another one where I was hot on that one too. I think Finley and I both have that issue though. So, yeah.
Cool. All right, I've got one last question, and then we're gonna close it down. And what were you listening to on your AirPods?
Oh, yeah. So I just had it paired to my watch, and it's the Spotify generated trance classics playlist. And
so just to confirm, you've now moved off the Fred Again boiler room.
Yeah, I have actually. I have. Well, no, honestly, I would have probably listened to that if I could have gotten SoundCloud on my watch, but it only supports Spotify. I don't know if actually maybe his boiler room is on Spotify. I've only ever found it on SoundCloud. I've never even.
Yeah, I've moved on from it too, but
okay,
I was using SoundCloud.
Okay. Yeah, no, it was. So I didn't want to. I don't use the music. I only use the music feature on here while racing, so I don't have a ton of experience using it. And I was I was having so much trouble skinning because it was so icy. I was constantly on the poles. So there was never, I think if the skinning conditions could have been better, I could have changed the fucking music on my watch. But as it was, it was 50 songs, probably 3 or 4 minutes each, call it, 3 minutes is 150 minutes. So 2.5 hours. At least I heard all those fucking, it seems like it was playing the same damn songs over and over again. And I was about to fucking lose it. But I was like, ugh, I guess this is better than listening to nothing.
It's got to be almost like a psychedelic experience listening to random unplanned trance.
Mont Blanc. Yeah. Because I try to always listen to, if I'm racing, I'll try to just listen to a playlist I've never really heard before. And so I had listened to that playlist before on May 20th, but that was the only time. I got really sick of it, and I wasn't comfortable enough with the interface on my watch such that I could, change the song without accidentally pausing the activity or something like that, in my state with the polls. So I was like, whatever, I'm just going to stick with whatever it's playing. But yeah, it wasn't very good. Yeah.
I have moved off Fred Again. I've even moved off dance music.
Oh, really?
And I only ever listen during hill reps.
Yeah.
But I'm listening to 5 Slipknot tunes on repeat.
No way.
It's working better than Fred Again. So
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's honestly, it's funny. I think it's enormously important to optimize. I don't find it as much for racing, but for training, I find it's really, if you're just doing the same fucking speed workout over and over again, it's really important to have some good music.
I think it helps get rid of all the other thoughts.
Yeah.
And I feel that I personally lose energy just through thinking about things.
Yeah.
So if all you're thinking about is this thing in the back of your mind and the breath and your rhythm, then it's kind of you're simplifying it as much as you can. But
no, for sure.
I won't be going with the trance playlist.
But,
if you share it with me, we'll stick it in the notes for this interview.
I'll send it to you. I will send it to you. But no, it is funny because like I don't know if it had anything to do with the music or whatever, or the altitude, or just like the intensity. But like I think I was telling you, like, I mean, I remember a bit of like crossing the Bassins and getting up to the Grand Malais, but like from the Grand Malais to the Petit Plateau, like I really don't remember anything. Like I remember the fucking skinning, was not very good, but like beyond that, like I think I was just, I mean, it's kind of weird, honestly. Like I think mainly because that section is rather featureless-ish, so it's not like a trail run where it's like, oh, I remember when I saw this and saw that, and it's just like you're just on a big white hill. But I mean, there was a lot of my memory is just kind of missing, but maybe it was the trance music.
Maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, thanks for sitting down to talk through it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for coming out and staging that stuff twice.
It's cool to be part of something epic. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Guys, what did you think? I think that was such an interesting, fun conversation with Jack. Hit me up down in the comments. Let me know what you think Jack should target next. Should he go and do the Paddy Buckley? Should he go back for another crack at the Bob Graham round? I think whatever he does, it's always fun to follow. I'm excited at the prospect that he will come back potentially next year and give another go at Mont Blanc. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up, share it with a friend, talk shit in the comments, do all that stuff that helps us reach a wider audience. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.